I wanted to jump in today and talk about public speaking. I've had a ton of clients who have been booking speaking lately, so it's sort of fresh in my mind, and I've had this conversation with a couple of clients over the last few days. So I thought it would be fun to talk about public speaking because I know there's a ton of you in this group who are either already speaking or are hoping to do more speaking in the future. So I want to talk about a few things I've run across lately as far as booking more speaking engagements, making more money, or at least getting your travel covered, things that are negotiable and aren't, how you ask for those kind of things, because I've had that conversation a lot with clients lately. Hi, Dorsey. Good to see you. Okay, so how to book more. Okay, the easy the easy answer to that is pitch yourself more. My clients who are out there pitching themselves for speaking on a regular basis are getting speaking engagements. It really is that simple. Some of it's a volume game. You're not going to get everything you pitch yourself for, but the more you pitch, the more you're going to get. And in fact, I have a client in my small group program, Dorsey's in my small group program, From the Shadows to the Spotlight. We have another member who's in there who's only been in, I don't know, maybe 6 weeks or a little longer. And she was really just looking to pitch herself for more free speaking and looked into some of the things I told her about in terms of just getting those like reps and having more speaking. Things like Rotary Club, Optimist Club, Lions Club, trade organizations if there's certain industries you serve. So for example, I used to do a lot of PR marketing for law firms, and so I did a lot of speaking for the Legal Marketing Association. So the great thing about a lot of those kind of speaking engagements is they lead to more, particularly for those kind of networking organizations like a Rotary Club or a Optimist Club or something like that. People who are in those kind of groups tend to also be active in a lot of other groups, the Chamber of Commerce, and then in trade organizations for their industry. And so I find that when I do Rotary speaking engagements, even though they're free, they're totally worth it because they end up leading to more speaking. Some Rotary clubs will let you come sell your book and do other things. There can be other ways to sort of capitalize on that. But I think it's a great place to get started, especially if you are just getting started and you're trying to build up more of that, get testimonials, and just get some reps with your speaking. So that same client ended up pitching herself for a conference. She had seen someone she knows speak at that conference last year, so she decided to pitch herself for the conference. And an interesting conversation that came out of that was that she was trying to figure out how to, or if she could ask about getting her travel covered, because it said somewhere either on the website or in the email that she got accepting her as a speaker that they weren't covering travel. And she found out that there was another speaker who was getting their travel covered. And I said, just ask. Tell them that you are getting ready to make your travel arrangements and plan your trip, and you just wanted to know, were they doing that for you, or should you go ahead and do it yourself? I forget the exact wording I gave her. I'm trying to think how I would have worded it. Something like, I'm thinking ahead about my trip to come speak at your conference, and I'm wondering if you all will be booking my travel and my hotel, or if I should take care of that. She said that something really short and sweet, and they ended up emailing her back, and they're covering her travel just because she asked. So that kind of led me to thinking about how I started getting paid to speak. And the first time I ever got paid to speak, it wasn't because I asked for it. It was because someone said, we can afford to offer you a speaking fee of X amount of money. I think the very first one I got paid for was $1,500, which is actually like high for a first time. If you get offered like $200 or $300 for a first time, don't be surprised. And I've sort of backtracked and did some of those after that. But this was to speak at a retreat for a law firm and didn't involve travel or anything like that. Anyway, when they offered me that money and gave me that speaking fee, it gave me the confidence to start asking to get paid. I do not have a set rate. So if people say, what do you charge for a 1 hour speech? I don't have a set rate. Now, in my mind and like behind the scenes, I kind of have a floor I'm not willing to go below without some other sort of like perks or something being thrown in, but I don't ever tell anybody what that number is. What I think that you should do is reply back to them and say, you know, I do have a speaking fee. I have a range that's dependent on the length of the speech and whether it's a speech versus a workshop and the amount of travel involved, how many days I'm going to have to take away from my business. You know, and I really try to work with the organizations that book me. Did you all have a budget in mind for speakers? And I'd say 8 times out of 10, they have a specific budget in mind and they'll come back with a number. Now, that's not to say that you can't negotiate that number and try to get it up a little bit. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but at least you know where their starting point is. And sometimes that number they come back with is bigger than what you would have asked for. And so you would have been, you know, totally screwing yourself if you had thrown out a number. It's just like, you've probably heard this advice when it comes to job interviews, as far as if somebody asks you, you know, what salary you want, you always want them to get it, say, well, what does the position pay? It's the same thing in speaking. You want to get them to tell you their number. If they insist and push back on you for you to come up with your number, then you're going to have to, and I certainly have had to before. And I've just come up with a base amount that I'm comfortable with, that I won't go below. And I think about things like, are they charging people to come to this? So if it's like an industry gathering that's local, then people maybe aren't paying to come to it, or maybe they're just paying for dinner or something, versus if it's like a conference that they're paying, you know, hundreds or thousands of dollars for the conference fee. So I try to get a feel for who's putting it on. Is it like a nonprofit trade association, or is it like a law firm? So that may color my opinion about how much I ask for. And then, are people paying to come to it? So if people are paying to come and there's some sort of like registration fee, and I sort of know about how many people are supposed to be at the conference, I mean, that can help me decide where in my range I want to pinpoint my number. It's not an exact science. And I think there's a lot of factors taken into consideration, but my top tip would be try to get them to give you their number. And again, if you're not happy with that number, know that that's negotiable, and that you can come back and say, you know, I'm going to have to miss work for 2 whole days. You know, even if you own your own business, you're going to be away from your own business for a couple of days, and, you know, say, you know, I really need to be somewhere closer to X amount. A lot of times they will come back to you and offer other things, like maybe they offer you a better hotel room, or they offer to fly your spouse with you, or they offer you extra nights in the hotel if it's a city that you might want to stay longer and vacation or explore. I've been offered a lot of that kind of stuff because they often already have a deal with the hotel, so it's easy to give you a hotel room for extra nights or give you a bigger, nicer room. Sometimes they've even got partnerships with airlines, and so they're able to fly your spouse, or they're able to upgrade you to first class. You know, there are other perks people will throw in. They'll say that they'll buy a certain number of your books to give out, or they'll give you trade booth space without you having to pay for it, or they'll give you the entire email list for everybody who's registered for the conference, and then you can follow up with people and retarget them for sales. You know, there are a lot of sort of extra things people can give you. So don't get so focused on the speaking fee alone, because I think there's some really awesome perks you can get if they can't get their speaking fee up. And they're usually very willing to do it because they feel hamstrung by their budget. Most people who have booked me feel bad that they can't pay me more. Like, they want to do more for me. And I've talked to other speakers who have had similar experiences. So, you know, don't be afraid to ask for more, particularly if you've been speaking for a little while, even if you've only been speaking for free, if you've got that kind of experience. And particularly if you've written a book in your field, or you've got a case study that would be valuable to them. You know, there's no one size fits all for it, but I would say I want to encourage you to ask to get paid, ask to get travel covered, ask to get extra bonuses and perks, you know, ask and negotiate. And it's not comfortable. I'm still not comfortable with it all the time, but the more you do it and the more you get paid, the more comfortable you'll get. And then you'll just be able to say, well, generally speaking, I don't do 1 hour speeches for less than X amount of money. Or generally speaking, you know, if I've got to travel 2 days, you know, it's got to be this. And people will be like, okay, you know, I mean, they get it. They understand that this is part of your business, that this is part of your livelihood, that this isn't like a hobby you're doing on the side. This is part of your business and part of how you make money. And if you start treating it like that, they will too. I've never lost a speech because of what I asked for. They never came back and were like, well, your fee didn't work for us, so we're not going to be able to do it this year. No, they always try to work something out. They always try to throw in something. It doesn't always end up working out, but I've never had anybody come back and just shut me down because I asked for too much. So don't be afraid to do that. And lastly, I just want to encourage you, get out there and pitch yourself for speaking engagements, pitch yourself to local groups, pitch yourself to conferences. You know, there's a lot of opportunity out there to speak. And I would say if you are between big paid speaking gigs or you haven't started getting them yet, book more of those local kind of free ones. The more you speak and the more you talk about the fact that you're speaking on social media and even in your email newsletter list, the more people will kind of come out of the woodwork and be like, oh, I've seen where you've talked about speaking about XYZ. You know, we want somebody who does that at our next conference. So the more you talk publicly about the speaking you're doing, I think the more speaking you will find comes your way. All right, I gotta go jump on another call. If you've got questions about public speaking, be sure to drop them here. And if it's something kind of off from what I talked about today, I will plan another live around it. I'm gonna try to start going live 2 or 3 times a week here in the group. So if you've got questions, you've got stuff you want me to cover, just let me know what it is. Have a great rest of the day.